Hello, today I will be talking about my learnings from task 1 up until to task 7. Now for the task 1 we set up a virtual machine. Now basically a virtual machine is a program you run on a computer that acts like it is a separate computer. This is basically a way to create a computer within a computer. For task 2, we set up and configure the task server. So the importance of a Windows server is that the Windows server features benefits from small business to large corporations. It generates energy consumption, savings, and licensing thanks to virtualization. Also, it improves response time due to a central administration through which practically all service can be managed in a data center. So there are 3 things that I learned while setting up and configuring the task server. Number 1, if you are installing Windows Server Essentials on a virtual machine, make sure that you choose the same time zone settings that are being used by the host operating system. Because if the time zone settings differ, the server installation may not succeed. The second thing I learned is that the server name must be a unique name on your network. You cannot change the server name or the internal domain name after you finish the setup. The third thing that I learned is that do not name the network administrator account administrator or network administrator because these account names are reserved for use by the system. For task 4, we set up Active Directory domain services. Now, an ADDS stores information about users, computers, and other devices on the network. ADDS helps administrators securely manage this information and facilitate resource sharing and collaboration between users. We should remember that to help ensure that users can still log on to the network in the case of a server outage, install a minimum of 2 domain controllers for a domain. Also, ADDS requires a DNS server to be installed on the network. If you do not have a DNS server installed, you will be prompted to install the DNS server role on this machine. So for task 5, we downloaded and installed Windows 10. So there are a lot of practical reasons to set up an OS like Windows 10 in a virtual machine rather than using it as a native installation. If you have to deal with files you can trust, need to test multiple OS installations on the same system, or need access to the operating system without wanting to use it as a daily driver, using a VM offers access to its features and capabilities without worrying about needing to keep the OS installation around long term. Luckily, setting up Windows 10 in a virtual machine isn't particularly difficult. For task 6, we joined Windows 10 to a domain server. Now, the biggest advantage of domains is that there is ease of controlling many computers at once. Without a domain, IT staff would have to individually manage each computer in a company. This means configuring security settings, installing software, and managing user accounts by hand. For the last task, we set up a DHCP server role. Now, the DHCP service brings 3 key values. 1. Operation tasks are reduced. The network administrator no longer needs to manually configure each client before it can use the network. Number 2, the IP addressing plan is optimized, which means addresses no longer being used are freed up and made available to new clients connecting. Number 3, user mobility is easily managed. This means that the administrator doesn't need to manually reconfigure a client when its network access point changes. So these are the things that I learned from task 1 up to task 7. Thank you for listening.